You asked for it over and over again, and now it's finally here, your ultimate beginner's guide to Shadow Priest in the War Within. Whether you're returning after years or trying it for the first time, this is how you do it in 2025. Mastering Shadow Priest revolves around 3 fundamental principles. Understanding these will make your gameplay smoother and help you optimize your damage. Shadow Priest is all about generating insanity through your abilities and spending it on Devouring Plague, your strongest damage over time effect. To maximize your damage, you want to maintain as much uptime as possible on your 3 key dots: Vampiric Touch, Shadow Ward Pain, and Devouring Plague, since they fuel your mastery Shadow Weaving, which increases your overall damage. Your mastery increases all your damage based on how many of your dots are active on your target. Each active dot grants a damage bonus based on your mastery stat. Keeping all 3 dots up ensures you get the maximum benefit from your mastery, increasing all your spell damage. In an ideal scenario, a Devouring Plague should be active nearly 100% of the time on your primary target, especially with the distorted reality talent. In real gameplay, uptime can vary depending on the fight, but aiming on at least 80 to 99% uptime is key to optimizing your damage. Now let's go over the 3 core fundamentals that define how you play Shadow Priest. 1. Maximize Devouring Plague uptime. As we already stated, Devouring Plague is your primary insanity spender, and keeping it active as much as possible is crucial for maintaining damage. Never overcap insanity, spend it on Devouring Plague before reaching 100 insanity. 2. Keep abilities on cooldown. Like a lot of other classes, Shadow Priest have cooldowns as well, and managing them properly ensures maximum damage output. The rule of thumb is to prioritize shorter cooldown spells over longer cooldown spells, so as to avoid situations where you lose an overall use of an ability throughout an encounter. And 3. React to procs. Shadow Priest has 2 key procs that influence your decision making. The first one is Surge of Insanity. This talent enhances your Mind Spike casts, but instead of being a random proc, you trigger it yourself. Every 2 casts of Devouring Plague transform your next Mind Spike into Mind Spike Insanity. Mind Spike Insanity deals a lot more damage than a regular Mind Spike and generates 3 times the insanity. You can store up to 4 charges, but to avoid waste, spend them before you overcap. And the second proc is Shadowy Insight. This resets Mind Blast's cooldown and makes it an instant cast. React quickly to avoid missing free Mind Blast casts. I want to briefly touch on hero talents and why I cover Voidweaver in this guide. In Mythic Plus, Shadow Priests have 2 main hero talent choices: Voidweaver and Archon. While Archon is the stronger choice at high keys, Voidweaver is more commonly played overall and is considered easier to use. Since this guide is beginner friendly, it's written in a way that assumes you're using Voidweaver, as it's the more accessible option of those trying Shadow Priest for the first time. If you prefer Archon, keep in mind that there will be some variations in talent choices and rotation priority, but for the sake of simplicity, this guide sticks to Voidweaver. Now we'll talk about the single target rotation and priority. First is Shadow Crash. If the target is stationary, open with this to apply Vampiric Touch to all enemies. If enemies won't stay in place, manually apply Vampiric Touch instead. Then Shadow Fiend. Shadow Fiend attacks your target over time, generating insanity with each hit. Then you activate Dark Ascension, your primary burst cooldown. Use it at the start of a fight or in burst windows. Then you want to pair Dark Ascension with Power Infusion. Cast this on an ally who benefits highly from haste. You'll also receive the buff from Twins of the Sun Priestess. If unsure, ask your party member who needs it most. Spend your insanity before capping by applying Devouring Plague on your target. Again, this is very crucial, and this is pretty high up in your priority list. Then you want to use Mind Blast if 2 charges are available. Then you want to use Void Torrent, and Void Torrent is a channeled ability that deals high damage and generates insanity. Use it while Devouring Plague has at least 2.5 seconds remaining to ensure full uptime during the channel. Then you would Mind Blast again. Keep this on cooldown, prioritizing Shadowy Insight procs for free instant cast Mind Blasts. The next priority is Mind Spike Insanity. Only cast this if Devouring Plague is still active when the cast finishes. Then you would use Shadow or Death, and you would want to use it if Death Speaker is active or if the target is below 20% health for the execute range. Then while waiting for your other cooldowns, you would use Mind Spike. And Mind Spike is a filler spell when Surge of Insanity isn't active. And finally, the last priority, instant casts filler if you're moving. If all of your other abilities are on cooldown and you need to move due to a mechanic, you still have options. You can cast Divine Star, it's a short-range projectile that damages enemies and heals your allies, or you can use Shadow Word Pain and Shadow Word Death, even if the target is above 20% HP. And it's just to keep dealing damage instead of running without casting anything. Now for the AoE priority. Shadow Priest's AoE functions very similar to single target, but with some major differences. First one is Shadow Crash. If the pool has 8 or fewer targets, cast Shadow Crash and start your rotation immediately as if it was single target. If there are more than 8 enemies, manually apply Vampiric Touch to a few first. 1 if there's 9 enemies, 2 if there's 10, and so on, until you reach 12 to 14 total. Then, you would cast Shadow Crash to cover the rest. Once Vampiric Touch is applied, focus on your rotation instead of wasting globals on extra dots. The next difference is Psychic Link, and this passive makes Mind Blast, Mind Spike, and Void Torrent cleave to all targets affected by Vampiric Touch. Then, Shadow Word Death Sniping. I kinda already mentioned it, but if you use the Death and Madness talent, you can reset the cooldown of Shadow Word Death by executing mobs, generating even more insanity. Next is Shadowy Apparitions and Idol of N'Zoth. These passives trigger additional AoE damage when multiple targets have Vampiric Touch. And finally, Shadow is a funnel spec, meaning your single target ability cleave through Psychic Link. Always focus the highest HP target to maximize your damage efficiently in AoE. Apart from these changes, your core priority remains the same: Devouring Plague uptime, cooldown management, and procs usage. At the end of the day, the most important thing is to spend your insanity on Devouring Plague before you cap, and keeping it rolling as often as you can. That's your biggest source of damage, and it ties directly to your mastery bonus when all 3 dots are active. Cast short cooldowns like Mind Blast as soon as they're ready, and don't hold them to bigger cooldowns like Dark Ascension for too long. In AoE, spreading Vampiric Touch efficiently, either manually or through Shadow Crash, is key to unlocking all your passive cleave effects. Once that's set, just go into your regular rotation and let the passives do their job. And when it comes to cooldowns, don't forget to cast Power Infusion on an ally who benefits from it, not just yourself. Queens of the Sun Priestess makes sure you still get the buff as well. If you stick to those basics, your Shadow Priest will perform well even in tough Mythic Plus dungeons. If this guide helped you out, feel free to like and subscribe. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.